Dalry Mapp was an employee in the illegal gambling rackets dominated by Cleveland Rackets kingpin Sean Burns. On May 23, 1957, police officers in Cleveland, Ohio received an anonymous tip by phone that Virgil Ogletree, a numbers operator who was wanted for questioning in the bombing of a rival numbers racketeer and future boxing promoter Don King's home 3 days earlier, might be found at Mapp's house, as well as illegal betting strips and the equipment employed in the California Gold numbers operation set up by Mapp's boyfriend Edward Keeling. 3 officers went to Mapp's home and asked to come look around. Mapp, after consulting her lawyer over the phone, decided not to let them in. 13 hours later, 4 full police cars showed up at Mapp's house demanding to be let in. According to Mapp's testimony, they shoved a paper at her, claiming for it to be a warrant, and then cuffed her for being unruly. The police found Burns hiding in the house, and in a safe in the basement, they found a pistol, various illegal betting strips, and various pornographic books and pictures.
Dollar Mapp was convicted for possessing obscene materials after an alleged illegal search for a fugitive and sentenced to 1 to 7 years in prison. She appealed these charges on the basis of freedom of expression in the First Amendment. The general consideration for the trial was, did the First Amendment protect Mapp in this court against these charges? The police did not have a search warrant, and that was the Supreme Court's main problem, as the First Amendment was dismissed on the nature of the findings being so inappropriate. Dollar Mapp sued the state of Ohio for infringing upon her constitutional rights. Her argument was on the basis of the First Amendment. The Supreme Court dismissed that evidence for the Fourth Amendment because the police did not have a warrant. Dollar Mapp said that they did give her a supposed warrant, but after looking at it, it was fake. The police officers denied ever giving her a warrant. The Supreme Court judges on this case include Warren, Black, Frankfurter, Douglas, Clark, Harlan, Brennan, Whitaker, and Stewart.
In a 6-3 vote, Mapp wasn't prosecuted for her illegal possessions. Despite them being considered illegal in the state of Ohio, the officers who obtained the pornography didn't have a warrant and entered the house on the presumption, still without a court-authorized warrant, in search of a bomb fugitive Sean Burns. Upon revealing illegal porn, the officers detained Dalry Mapp. Claiming that this violated her First Amendment right, Mapp brought it to the Supreme Court after losing the case in Ohio District Court. The Supreme Court overturned their sentence, claiming infringement of the Fourth Amendment, not the First, that since her possessions were gathered through illegal means, she couldn't be prosecuted using the federal exclusionary rule, stating that if evidence is acquired illegally, it may not be used in a court of law. If she was prosecuted despite the violation of her right, the Fourth Amendment, according to Justice Clark, might as well be stricken from the Constitution. Justice Harlan was the leader of the dissenting opinion, stating that this wasn't in fact a Fourth Amendment issue, but a First Amendment issue. Their job wasn't to analyze whether or not the police had a warrant, but whether or not Ohio's laws were, in his words, consistent with the rights of free thought and expression assured against state action by the 14th Amendment. He also backed his argument by stating that they were using the exclusionary rule, using the federal criminal court system, despite it not being in their jurisdiction, and that she should be subjected to the ruling of the state. They weren't using judicial restraint, the idea that a judge should closely analyze any law regardless of their first impressions of whether or not it's unconstitutional, as well as not exercising stare decisis, the process of looking at preceding cases to come to a conclusion regarding present ones.
The first case similar to Mapp v. Ohio is Weeks v. the United States. The overview for this case is that the police entered the home of Fremont Weeks by using a key given to him by one of Weeks' neighbors. Upon entering, they found evidence that he had transported lottery tickets by mail, violating the criminal code. The case was then taken to the Supreme Court, where they ruled that the search had been illegal since there was no warrant. Therefore, any evidence found inside his house shall be dismissed. The second case, similar to Mapp v. Ohio, is Roe v. Wade. The overview for this case is that in 1969, Norma McCorvey found out that she was pregnant with her third child. Per recommendation from some of her friends, McCorvey decided to claim that she was raped, therefore she could get an abortion. She attempted to get an illegal abortion, but further realized that the abortion clinic had been shut down by the police, since most abortion was illegal in Texas, the exception being rape and incest situations. McCorvey was then referred to attorneys who would fill out the case. The defendant in this case would be a Dallas County District Attorney Henry Wade. In 1973, the Supreme Court decision ruled that under the due process laws of the 14th Amendment, the court recognized that the right to an abortion was protected with the guarantee of personal privacy. This relates to Mapp v. Ohio because in both cases, the Supreme Court based part of their decision on the due process clause. The main constitutional principle is the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment is basically that the police may not enter private property without a warrant. Other principles that apply include the Due Process Clause and the First Amendment. The main question the Supreme Court asked was, did the Ohio court infringe upon Dolery Mapp's constitutional rights?
The enduring legacy of Mapp v. Ohio is the way criminal procedures are handled. It changed the way police forces look at search and seizure with the Fourth Amendment, and it brought to light that evidence obtained in violation of the Fourth Amendment may not be used as evidence in state courts and federal courts. All future cases take this into consideration, no matter how interesting that evidence may be.